Okay, everybody, we may get started here right now. And welcome to another Ignite Equity Capital Raising Zoom webinar. And as everybody should know by now, at Ignite Equity, whenever we're doing a capital raising, we will be significantly investing ourselves. Upfront with the disclaimer, this is not professional advice. You should seek your own personal circumstances before making any investment decisions. But with that introduction, I just want to start out and say at Ignite, what we're always looking for are commodities that we think are undervalued and companies that have specific catalysts that can really take advantage, and obviously we think are incredibly undervalued. And that's why today we are thrilled to be joined by State Gas and its managing director, Doug McAlpine, because we think State Gas is one of those companies. They've just had a recent announcement that I will let Doug talk about, that we do think fundamentally changes the shape of the company, gives it the clear path forward. And when you look at its market cap compared to what they have in the ground, it seems significantly undervalued to us, and it just needs a little bit of time. And with that introduction, Doug, welcome.
Thanks, Greg, and the biggest thanks to the Ignite Equity team who I've enjoyed working with over the last little while. So thanks for all your hard work so far, and thanks for the opportunity today.
Great. Hey, Doug, State Gas, and specifically Rolleston West, the project, and maybe talk about it a little bit, and especially in the context of East Coast gas in Australia.
Yeah, happy to, Greg. So our Rolleston West project is a coal seam gas project located in the southern part of the Bowen Basin. We're in an area where we are targeting the Denniston Trough coal formations. That's an area that exists between Santos's Arcadia project in the northern part of the Surat Basin and is abutted to the north by Denison Gas's privately owned coal projects, and further north of that, Comet Ridge. So we're in a highly prolific gas production zone. It's well located for infrastructure, approximately 30 kilometres to the west of the Gladstone-Wallumbilla pipeline. And we've been working in that location for a few years now, doing early stage exploration and appraisal. And we're very excited to have reached an important milestone last week, where we have released our first maiden accredited 2P reserve for the project of 30 petajoules of gas, with a further 14 petajoules in the 3P category.
Right.
We think that this project has significant potential. It's in a large coal in a coal, well understood coal bearing area. Gas production statistics, subsurface conditions are all very encouraging, and the project area is surrounded by a much larger zone of 2C resource, which we think possesses significant expansion capability for us.
Right.
The important part for us, in relation to your question about the East Coast gas market, is
yes,
the timing of when we're going to bring that project to market, which could, we'll be accelerating now and could be trying to bring that to construction sort of within the next 3 years. Is that ties in very closely with weakening supply conditions on the East Coast and increasing demand for gas, both in the domestic market and to support LNG export.
Right. That certainly makes sense. And before we go on to a little bit more about the macro, can you just tell us last week's, or I believe it was about 10 days ago, announcement, the 2P maiden, why is that so important, especially in terms of offtake agreements or the potential for offtake agreements?
Yeah, good question, Greg. And for those of you who don't follow oil and gas stocks closely or resource stocks closely, a 2P reserve accreditation for a gas company is an important milestone, because it's an independent third-party accreditation of both the geological conditions in the project area and the economic fundamentals of developing an economically sustainable project based on those resources. So the company has a hypothesis that it thinks it can build a project there, and it goes and does exploration activity, drills wells, analyzes the subsurface conditions, builds geological models, then starts building economic models on top of that. A 2P reserve means we've shown all of that to a third-party expert, and they've independently verified the company's assumptions and have certified that there is 30 petajoules of gas in that location, and 30 petajoules of gas in that location, in our case, would support a minimum 10-year project capable of producing 10 terajoules of gas a day. And that's a substantial gas project.
That's right. And so you're in potential to produce substantial gas production in a very tightly supplied market. Everybody that knows anything about commodities, you always want to be in a market where there's a very tight supply-demand situation, a huge amount of demand and a supply shortage. Doug, can you just also talk to us, and it's always about the path forward with investments. What would you like to see out of the business over the next couple of years?
Yeah, look, I think it's a very important and exciting period ahead for the company now that we've come out with our 2P reserve. So the 2P reserve adds a significant amount of credibility to our narrative around the fundamentals of the Rolleston West project and allows us to move forward on a whole bunch of parallel work streams with certainty. So in no particular order, what we'll be doing over the next 6 to 12 months, but largely in parallel, will be progressing baseline environmental studies and engagement with the Queensland government around obtaining permanent production tenure. So we'll be on the pathway to getting a petroleum lease. We're going to immediately commence concept studies for the plant and full field development for the project. So that is how many additional wells we've got to drill, what are the locations, how much compression do we need to put on the ground, and other treatment that's necessary in that location to be able to capture, treat and compress the gas on site. And then we're going to commence pre-feed and feed conversations with pipeline infrastructure providers so that we can get a sufficiently sized pipeline connection to the location that connects us into the Gladstone-Wallumbilla pipeline system.
Right.
The other thing that we'll be doing in parallel with that is we'll be going out and having initial discussions around the identification of a suitable project partner to work with us as we try to bring this project from a pre-development phase into development phase. And, you know, those project partner relationships could be finding a farm out, doing a joint venture sell down, but basically trying to find someone who believes in the project fundamentals or is interested in gas offtake, who's willing to lend their balance sheet and their experience to helping us accelerate the development of the project.
Right. And none of these would be possible without the 2P announcement a couple of weeks ago, would they?
Yeah, that's right. Like, I think you can try to do that without the 2P reserve accreditation, but I think the 2P reserve accreditation, in particular one, like in our case, that's signed off by Netherlands Sewells, is a real third-party endorsement that this is a high-quality project with strong fundamentals and the geology is very attractive.
Right. And also, when it comes to now turning towards the balance sheet, if you will, you're doing ATO rebate. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. The company has, as part of its exploration and appraisal journey, developed some innovative new technology around gas compression, and we've been working on that for many years. So this is the third year of that project. Each year we've been able to claim an R&D grant with respect to our engineering and design costs that's gone into developing that technology. And so in the FY24 tax year, we have made an R&D claim in respect of the development of the pilot plant. So that was a large expenditure and a large claim relative to the 2 previous years. And in accordance with the ATO's normal review process, that's been flagged for further review based on its scale. So we're just in the process now of working through that with the ATO, and we expect a positive resolution of that shortly.
That's right. And we're not going to get into too many of the specifics right now because it's more about the business and the fundamentals. But the way that this capital raise is structured is to take advantage of this gap in time, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think, on the back of the 2P reserve, we want to move very quickly to start working on all those work streams that I mentioned before, being able to have funding certainty that enables us to engage third-party advisors and consultants and start this work and be able to kick that off quickly. And get real momentum underway here. That's going to be the key to us hitting our aggressive timetables of trying to get to a final investment decision, feasibility, and PL approval within 18 months. So having the right level of capital to move forward with that with certainty is important to us, and this is going to provide us with that, I think.
Right. And here at Ignite, what we're thinking also is that when we have the 8-year rebate due circuit, in early 2026, and then before you know it, even though it's very hot out here right now, it'll be the winter of 2026, and all of a sudden you may have gas spikes and our gas bills go up, and it puts a lot of light on the companies like State Gas. Doug, can you just opine from your position for one moment on just the state of the regulatory environment, and obviously as we make that transition into cleaner fuels, where does State Gas fit into that equation?
Yeah, look, I think for those who follow the sector, or those people who read the cost of their own energy bills, I think it's clear that there's real supply demand problems on the east coast of Australia to do with baseline energy inputs. So I think just despite the challenges around political positioning on this issue, our view, State Gas's view, my personal view is that natural gas on the east coast of Australia is going to be a fundamental input to a sensible energy equation for the medium to long term. It is, in my view, the only reliable, available, cost-effective fuel source to supplement transition away from existing baseload power supply positions at the moment on the road to a sensible transition towards renewables. That transition is inevitable, and we're completely supportive of that. But our hypothesis internally is that the real timeline for making that transition is probably a lot longer than people think, for a variety of reasons. And therefore, that creates a macro environment where natural gas is going to be critically important, and therefore new exploration, the identification of new projects, and the acceleration of exploration assets into development and operational assets is absolutely critical in my view, over the next sort of 3 to 5 years.
Right.
The other important dynamic is that there's going to be a huge draw on gas supply to support domestic uses, so domestic industrial applications, domestic energy supply. But don't forget, there's also a big strategic overlay economically for LNG export out of Queensland. I mean, I think people don't like to talk about that because of the sort of conflict that exists between gas resources remaining onshore versus going offshore. But the practical reality is that there's long-term commitments to supply Queensland gas to international gas users. Those commitments need to be honoured. That needs continued supply, and State Gas is in a very useful position in that it's got the ability to produce gas from its tenements that have no restrictions on whether that gas can be sold domestically or internationally.
Right. And also, and we do want to be somewhat consistent with time here, but how does State Gas's potential fit into the size of the overall equation of gas in Queensland? Because it's not insignificant at all, is it, the potential here?
Yeah, I think a 10 terajoule a day gas project is a substantial project. So, I mean, bringing 10 terajoules a day of gas to market, that is a significant achievement. That would be a significant achievement in the context of, would existing LNG gas suppliers be interested in securing 10 terajoules of gas a day? The answer to that is unequivocally yes.
Yeah,
would domestic energy providers be interested in secure energy users require 10 terajoules of gas a day, industrial users? All of those are a yes. So it's big enough that everyone would be interested, but it's also a manageable enough size where an organisation of our size and scale could realistically deliver a project of that scale.
Right. And before we open it up to Q&A, any closing comments that you'd want every investor or potential investor just to know about State Gas?
Yeah, look, I think it's been a bit of a journey, no doubt, and for those existing shareholders who listen to this, I'm sure they'd appreciate that. For new investors who are coming to the story now, I think we're at a very important time. The 2P reserve is a critical milestone value marker for the company, and I think it sets out a very clear pathway that's been trodden by others about how you take an asset in its current phase through to a development phase. So, which we're going to go down a well-trodden path. We've got the ability of learning from others, and there's going to be a series of exciting, value catalysts over the next 6 to 12 months as we sort of move down the road and tick off some of those objectives that people will be able to follow the story. And, I think we're going to deliver an asset at a time and gas into a market at a time when it's much needed. And there's not many other junior resource companies in the gas space in Queensland at the moment who are in a similar position to us. And therefore, I think we're certainly, if not first among equals, certainly quite up there.
Okay. Thanks, Doug. And I'm going to open up the Q&A right now. Anybody, you can either obviously just raise your hand on the Zoom link, or you can just WhatsApp me. Exactly. I'm already getting a question. And Doug, I'll give it to you. It just in its raw form. Has anybody approached you yet after your 2P announcement regarding a takeover?
Well, I'm happy to say on this call, no one's launched a takeover bid. That has not happened. What I can say though is, in the week and a bit that's followed the 2P reserve announcement, there's been plenty of inbound inquiry in the company about the project and what we're doing and what the roadmap is, and I think that's an encouraging sign.
Right, and hang on, he's just right. Is the inbound inquiries coming from industry players or investors?
Both.
Okay.
There's industry players who are interested in participating in the development of a gas project. There's industry participants who are interested in securing certainty about future gas supply. So it's been a bit of both, and obviously inbound investment inquiry about how people can become involved. All of those things. And
the pathway to the permit, can you just talk about that, please?
Yeah, sure. So the primary activity that you need to do in order to secure a PL, in conjunction with having a sufficient 2P reserve, which we now have, is undertaking the appropriate environmental baseline studies that allow you to satisfy the approval conditions in Queensland. So our work plan in that regard will be to, develop a work plan in conjunction with the Queensland State Government about, a roadmap of milestones of what we need to do. But the work largely is around, environmental baseline studies and ground monitoring studies, water monitoring studies, and basically an administrative process of lodging documentation for review about project plans and infrastructure locations and pipeline routes. But one of the big benefits of state gas is that through building the HDNG pilot plant last year, right, we've already been through the process once about what we need to do from a regulatory, safety, operational perspective to get into a position where we can operate a gas asset. So it's basically just expanding work we've already done in the past, sufficient to underpin a long-term gas project development. Right. And hang on one second. Apologies. Sure. I'm just reading it as it comes to. Yeah. Can you take it? You've somewhat answered the question already, but I'll ask it anyway. Can you take advantage of existing infrastructure nearby? Yeah, there's absolutely. I think it goes without saying. The gold medal outcome for us here would be to develop the 10 terajoule a day gas project with as little a capitalist footprint as possible. I mean, absolutely, that's the case. There's three main pools of capital to build the project. There's the capital necessary to drill the additional wells. There's the capital to build the compression and whatever minor processing you need to put at the compression facility to treat the gas and get it compressed to a level where you can put it in the pipeline. And then the third line is the pipeline connection. So the broad work program is that we think that you can find a ready-made solution to have people fund the development of additional wells. There's a sort of well-trodden path about people farming into projects to drill wells in exchange for securing gas. So there's a pathway for how you can identify capital for that. The capital for building the compression assets it's just a mathematical equation based on your project size and compression requirements. It's not a substantial amount of capital, and there's plenty of infrastructure financiers around who will do that. Right. And then our sort of overriding assumption at the moment is that we will have a pipeline infrastructure provider build and operate the pipeline connection to our location and the connection point back into the Gladstone Wallabilla pipeline. And we've already had early stage engagement with a variety of those counterparts about their participation in the project. So that's well underway. Right.
Doug, thank you so much. We know that you're busy on a capital raising day, of course. Everybody, again, we will be investing significantly into this transaction. If you have any questions at all for Sean or myself, just send them on through. We're always happy to chat. Doug, thank you so much for your time. And by the way, one last thing, just a shout out to Phil St. Baker. I believe he is the largest, he's the chairman and largest shareholder. Phil, thank you very much. A pleasure to work with you always.